Hello, and thank you for being one of the 5 people to download this podcast. We are the Layman experts, who are joined by me, Payam Tagizada, and Alistair Yeoman.
Thanks, Mum. Thanks, man. Thanks, Payam's mum.
Thanks, Payam's sister, for listening to it as well.
Actually, there's a stat. 1 in 5 women have not worn underwear at work, which sounds brilliant, but actually, when you think that there's 5 people watching this podcast, it starts to get a little bit weird.
And 4 of them are women in our family.
Yeah. You sort of spelled it out there.
Oh God, let's move on.
Moving swiftly on. So we are 2 friends.
We are.
Long-standing.
Kind of.
Yeah. we've been known each other for a while, and we've decided we want to start recording some of the chats we have about overly long, random topics. We're interested in lots of things, like the millennial generation are these days. They watch lots of YouTube, they read loads of... Well, I don't read anything really, do they? You just watch stuff.
Read loads of Twitter.
Yeah, we read loads of
Facebook,
short posts. Yeah. We are hoping to sort of have a few different... We don't call them series or seasons.
Well, with their different seasons.
With different seasons, and we're going to focus on different topics. The first one, always our aim is to be forward-looking in what we talk about. So the first season is going to be on football. It's not going to be your average, come on boys, it's going to be more, hopefully, a little bit forward-looking and seeing what the future of football holds. Second one's going to be on technology, and that's going to be looking at all the crazy stuff we see these days, like the Elon Musk reusable rockets, developments in the health space. It's going to be super interesting, hopefully.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, hopefully. We're just going to read loads of stuff that is interesting and just tell you guys, basically. And then we're going to maybe move on to some like geopolitics. Basically just keep doing sort of short, four episode seasons on things we think are interesting and current. Pam, anything to add to that?
No, I think you've done a fantastic job of it.
Thank you very much.
And if you can, find us on iTunes, Podbean, and check us out on YouTube. We hope you enjoy. Hello, and welcome to episode 1 of the Layman Experts. You are joined by me, Payam Tagizada, and my friend Alistair Yeoman.
Alright.
Alright. Alistair, how are you today?
Yeah, good, mate. You've got a nice little haircut there. Haven't seen you for 2 weeks, and you're looking fresh, mate.
I grew myself for you and the audience, but now I've realised we're not doing a video, so I kind of feel like it's wasted £15.
Wow, I can still see it, and is that a new t-shirt as well you got on?
To be honest with you, Alistair, times are hard, alright? We're hoping this podcast will become a big hit. I can afford some new clothes.
Yeah.
He's referencing a t-shirt I bought for our Euro trip in 2010.
Yeah.
So it's 8 years old now.
Yeah.
It still fits me. Shows I've stayed thin.
How much did it cost initially? About £7?
It was 2 for 12. The top man t-shirts.
Economic, yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. So, as it is our first episode, Alistair, can you please tell everyone why we're called the Layman Experts?
Yeah, I guess, as the name suggests, we are not suggesting that we are going to be able to provide you with, the absolute solution or the absolute correct answer. It's more like us just talking about things we're interested in, having done research, and just giving our opinions, really. By no means, I guess it's a bit of a disclaimer. Don't expect us to always talk the right answers. It might not be, but we're just naturally interested in these topics, and it's the era now where if you're interested, why not give something a go? So that's what we're trying to do here.
Thank you very much. And who chose the name?
It was you, mate.
Thank
do
you.
You want to do a round of applause for that?
I do. I think it was a really cool name.
Yeah. Good name it.
Okay, and what you wanted it to be called in layman terms?
Yeah.
An expression in the English language.
Yeah. Obviously, if you Google that, loads of stuff comes up, so you can't have that one. No. We're here today, and we're raring to go, right?
Yes, we are. And can you please give us the question we're trying to answer in this first episode?
So I guess it's a bit of a long question, but the question is, can there be a superpower, a league superpower outside the top 5 European football leagues? So, the top 5 European leagues are Italy, France, Germany, Spain and England, the Premier League. Can there be a league, doesn't matter where in the world, that competes on the same level as these leagues, the same standard as these leagues, the same amount of money as these leagues. And I guess that question is clearly influenced by what we see in the football world at the moment, what's been happening relatively recently, to do with, signings by clubs located in US, in China. I could even say in Saudi Arabia. Those clubs have been making headlines recently by sometimes signing players who are coming towards the end of their career for big money. But there's been recent instance where there's been players who are in the middle of their career or at the start of their career going to those places. So it does beg the question, where are these leads going in the future? So yeah, that's the question.
No, nicely put question. And I think we're going to try and answer this in 3 parts. We're going to briefly look at the past and kind of when did Europe become such a big place for football.
And I guess that gives us context as to sort of what's been the driving force up until now for these leagues, right?
Correct, exactly. Yeah. And then we'll kind of look at the present, try to look at the internal battles within Europe and look ahead in the future and what we imagine what the future is going to look like.
And I guess when we do that, we'll then provide almost like a framework for what makes a great league. And we can then maybe decide how does that framework work in a different country, or can it work in a different country?
Nicely put, nice. So I'm going to actually ask you, so what do you think makes a great league?
Well, as a football fan, it's clearly the players. It's clearly the standard of football that makes a great league. But I guess as well, there's maybe slightly more to it than that.
Yeah, players is one thing. I was going to say, players number 1, I'd say, actually. And competition is so important because otherwise it gets boring, innit?
Yeah.
How many people outside of Scotland watches the SPL? Celtic and Rangers are playing today. They're actually playing today. It's 5-0 to Celtic, I think. So, it's just so important to have some sort of competition.
You could even say that about certain matches in the Spanish and German leagues.
Yeah, French league.
Yeah.
And until recently, Serie A as well in Italy.
Yeah, didn't PSG beat Monaco 7-1 and Monaco second in the last few weeks?
Yeah, exactly.
That's just that's so boring for fans to see that.
Exactly. Yeah, nicely put. So I kind of wanted to start about the past and when we got to where we are at the moment. So a few statistics for you guys. 1970 World Cup squad, which is well known as being one of the greatest teams of all time.
Yeah, Brazil, yeah.
Yeah, Brazil.
Yeah.
At the 22 players in that squad, every single player, Alistair, played for a Brazilian club. Then you fast forward 24 years to 94, when Brazil beat Italy in the World Cup final. Roberto Maggio missed that penalty.
Yeah.
Heartbreak for Alistair. He's, of course, Italian. He's very proud of it.
Yeah,
Don't know why.
3-year-old Alistair was fuming at Roberto Maggio. Kicking off,
he was.
Yeah.
And then, so in 1994, 11 out of the 22 players playing in Brazil. So that number halved in that space of time. So you fast forward from that 20 years to 2014, the World Cup squad that was actually playing in Brazil when Brazil hosted it. Yeah. Only 4 of the 23 players played in Brazil. So if I say to you these statistics, what do you think about it?
Well, I guess having been born in the 90s, it almost seems strange that at one point a whole Brazilian team was playing in Brazil. And I just that just shows how far it's changed and how inconceivable it's become that Brazilian players can stay in Brazil and make a future for themselves.
So actually, why do you think people would come to Europe in the first place? I guess they want money, prestige.
Yeah, I guess it's both of those things. But surely, prestige is one thing, but surely it's got to be money because. If all those Brazilian players were in Brazil at one point, why did they suddenly move?
True.
Why wasn't prestige created in those leagues?
And once upon a time I was there, so one of the greats of all time, Pelé, never left Brazil. Didn't feel like he needed to.
Yeah, and I'm sure there would have been players who kids who, there definitely would have been players who would have grown up watching Pelé going, oh wow, Santos are an amazing club, I really want to play for them. But for some reason, that doesn't materialise to loads of brilliant Brazilian players staying at Santos these days. No,
the last big one, remember Neymar, but the whole time in Santos, people were just waiting for him to come to Europe, weren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Back then, it was just an exception for players to play in Europe.
Yeah.
Di Stefano was the clear one that played for Real Madrid in the 50s. Yeah. But now it's just an exception for them to stay, even.
Yeah, and I suppose if you look at where they've been moving to, I guess 80s, 90s, absolute unbelievable players like Ronaldo #9. He was at Inter, then he went to Madrid. He was at Barcelona as well. But I think that these days, obviously PSG are a team of signing, and also the Premier League are getting these players. And I think that outside those top European clubs like Brazil, Barcelona, you're seeing, I think, in general, Brazilian players moving where money goes. The reason being that if you look back 80s and 90s, those Italian clubs had big Brazilian players, all the biggest South American talent, and that started to change and move in different directions now. And I think the Italian clubs have lost their prominence a bit, and therefore the players have moved. And you see like these days, even like the big Russian clubs, CSKA, they have Brazilian players.
Hulk went to Zenit St. Petersburg from Porto, and he was meant to be a good big start. Chelsea were interested in him at one point.
So and he went to a Chinese club.
Yeah, exactly. We'll move on to that in a minute. So I guess we've established that Europe beat South America in terms of the dominance for football leagues. Like after a while, they just all came here because they're going to get paid more. It was just a much better lifestyle for them and a better choice for them. And I guess we can't really blame them either, as a lot of them come from big families, and the pay they're going to get here is so much more. They can send the money back.
I think that and a lot of them obviously have, like you say, come from favelas, and it's no word of a lie. I think it's very few of those Brazilian players come from affluent. I think Oster was one of them who came from a relatively affluent background.
Kaká as well.
Yeah, but a lot of them don't. A lot of them come from absolute poverty, and their friends are in absolute poverty. Their friends' families are in absolute poverty, and they see, some of them see football as, well, it's definitely a way out, and it's a way to provide to the rest of their families. So, I think people see Brazilian players as the best in the world, but also a lot of people get quite offended when, for example, Diego Costa left Chelsea. They thought, the way he plays, the way he communicates with the fans, he was one of them. But the moment he wasn't feeling it, he's like, no, I'm not turning up to training, I'm leaving. And that sort of shows that, these Brazilian players, and same with Coutinho, like he was Liverpool through and through, and then the moment he got an offer from Barca, he wanted to go. These Brazilian players, they grow up watching the big European clubs, Barca, Madrid. That's where their dreams lie. And then the rest of the time, they're moving, I think, for career progression and money. And I think sometimes money is more important, and you can argue that more of a case with some players than others. But I think that a lot of these players are doing more than just a Wayne Rooney playing because he loves football. They're doing it to get themselves out of trouble, I'd say, in Brazil, into financial trouble. A completely different way of life, making something for themselves. So I think that's a key point when you think of how talent moves from South America, which clearly is one of the biggest sort of talent pools in the world. And I think
conveyor belt, pretty much, isn't it, of talent?
Exactly. I think that's the biggest representation in the Champions League is Brazilian players. And like we said at the start, for us as fans, it's the players that we see makes a league.
Yeah.
And this is the reason why all this links together.
It's true. And the way that the European clubs can make their money now is so much easier than back in the day because the media is so powerful. We have terrestrial TV, cable TV, live streaming all over the world.
Yeah.
I mean, just to put into context, the Premier League knows how to exploit their league so well. 50% of the Premier League club's income is through media, whereas in Brazil, the Brazil top league, it's only 25% of the income.
Yeah.
And actually, minimum. So there's a really good article by Rory Miller. He's a professor in the University of Liverpool for Latin American Studies. And he was saying that at least 20% of their revenue comes from selling players to European leagues.
Yeah.
So we're so much wealthier. So many does talk essentially. We're so much wealthier. These Brazilian top clubs rely on selling their players to European teams.
Yeah.
In order just to generate profit and keep going themselves.
Okay, so I think the point we've made there really with Brazil, I guess, is the fact that they're an amazing talent pool, but at the moment they're almost dictated by where the money is. So I guess the point we're making here at the moment is those leagues that are the big leagues, Premier League, for example, money is an important factor. Okay, but what if we were to compare, let's say, the French league, Spanish league, English league, Italian league, the top 5 leagues. Out of those top 5 leagues, who's the weakest league, would you say?
The weakest, the French.
Okay, French league. Any thoughts why that might be?
I think it's for me. So we talk about players in competition. Now they got players such as Neymar, Cavani, Mbappe, Pastores.
Well,
yeah,
they're all at one club.
yeah. That's the point. That's the point of competition. That's my next one. You just jumped in there.
Sorry, mate.
No, it's alright. So the players are there, but all in one club. So it's kind of boring, really. That's why I choose them.
And I think I've read something recently, and I read something. I'm pretty
Smarter than he looks.
Pretty impressed. And it basically said that the reason the French league has always lagged behind the other leagues in Europe is because whilst English clubs, commonly outspend what they sort of earn these days through ownership, French clubs always spend within their means, and that's sort of like a cultural thing. And also as well, the media encourage that. Like the media will sort of, take the mick out of clubs who don't do that. PSG are obviously a huge anomaly.
The Arabs.
But yeah, obviously backed by, is it Qatar or Saudi?
Qatar.
And they've just got an unlimited amount of money. Basically what's happened is because they've always spent within their means, they never had those big transfers. And instead, all the French players move out of the French league to make a name for themselves. And French players is actually the second biggest representation in the Champions League. But most of them play outside of France. And that again shows that even though the French league is a really established, brilliant league, regardless, in comparison to those other 4 leagues, it lags behind. And the reason they can't keep the French players, the French talent, is because of money. And if you look at statistics, let me have a little look. So this is 15-16. This is taken from a Deloitte report on football, which is pretty informative, and we'd like to think the facts are correct. But
we trust them.
Yeah.
Trust the system.
Yeah, exactly. The system.
The man.
Yeah.
Fake news.
So, PSG in 2015-16 were responsible for 35% of the division's total revenue. Mm-hmm. So that shows that basically they're spending a lot of money, but the money they spend is also drawing in revenue because of marketing factors, because of their dominance in the Champions League. These sort of factors it's almost like a stepping ladder. I think that's the reason why the French league is lagged behind, and I think it's why if you look at German league, you look at Borussia Dortmund, you saw them competing brilliantly. Under Klopp, and they had all those brilliant players, but then Klopp went, they sold them all. Mm-hmm. They haven't really tried to replace them.
No, they were starting to sell whilst he was there as well. So Götze, that same summer where they got to the Champions League final.
Yeah,
it's true. So I think clubs like clubs in France and Germany, they're exporters of players, and now with PSG spending so much money, the Ligue 1, they're trying to export their football. So with Neymar coming in, it's such a big marketing tool. It's fantastic. Now people all over the world will be more interested in watching the French leagues.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, now they stopped exporting players, they can export the actual football through media as well. Mm-hmm. So it was, do you think PSG being what they are is helpful to the French league, or do you think it's hindering them?
I think that like what we said at the start about what makes a good league, the players and competition. I think the players are in PSG, majority of them. Obviously, there's a few anomalies. There's Monaco, they've got people like Thomas Lemar, who are amazing to watch, but the competition isn't there.
Yeah. He'll go soon.
Yeah, he'll go soon. Of course he will. He was linked to Arsenal last year, linked to other clubs as well. But if there's no competition there, people don't want to watch the French league because there's just not enough competition. And I think that again becomes a problem in terms of marketing factor and in terms of TV deals they can get. Another thing about why the Premier League in the recent years has become so successful, right? Over the 3 seasons, right? This is again a fact from that Deloitte report. Over the 3 seasons from 13-14 to 15-16, Premier League clubs generated combined operation profits of 1.6 billion, more than they had managed in the total previous 16 seasons combined. And a key point, that profit they make is distributed a lot more fairly across the whole league compared to other teams, other leagues. Sorry, so people like Madrid, Barca, they get a lot more money than the smaller teams like Real Sociedad or whoever. And I think that again is another reason why someone like Leicester were able to challenge, because they were minnows, they didn't have the big names, but they still had very good players.
Yeah.
They still had players like Mahrez, who cost, I don't know...
It cost £500,000, I think, something ridiculous.
Oh shit, that's about it.
I was like, no, but it makes sense. So even West Ham, they could spend like 26 million on Arnautovic.
That following season, Leicester won the league, they had 90 million to spend in revenue.
That's huge.
Do you know what I mean? That's serious money, as opposed to what Atletico Madrid have been really dominant team in Europe, and they've dropped off. They haven't been spending big money. They haven't been making big money.
No.
And they're still a selling team.
They are.
To be honest.
Because Griezmann looks like he's going to go in the summer,
and
they have no choice. He's got €100 million sellout clause, so he has to go.
Well, and they haven't surrounded him with these big names that they could have done. But you'd expect a semi-final Champions League 2.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Or final Champions League 2.
But I guess they just didn't have the revenue to do so. So you make an excellent point in terms of in the Premier League, they distribute the wealth quite fairly.
Yeah, which makes better for competition.
Exactly. Unfortunately, I think other clubs around Europe, they kind of got it wrong. I'm looking mainly at Spain. So Barcelona and Real Madrid take so much of that revenue because they generate it. But it's so short-sighted because that's going to run out of steam soon. They can't keep doing this. I mean, maybe not so soon.
Are you talking about from a club perspective or from a league perspective?
From a league perspective, because the Premier League is seeing the benefits of having this competition. It's exciting for everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, a great example is you can see João Mario, who just a couple of years ago was seen as a big prospect. Now he's at West Ham. I mean...
Yeah. From Inter Milan,
Yeah, exactly. Cedric, he won the Euro 2016, started every game for Portugal. He's playing at Southampton. Looks like he's going to get relegated for Southampton.
Yeah. So what you're saying is it shows that the quality is not always there across the leagues. Okay, I get you. Alright, okay.
Exactly, I think it's very important. So we're talking about the present now, obviously what we're focusing on. And in terms of the league, the Premier League has got it so spot on to make us competitive and enjoyable to watch.
Okay, so we like Premier League. The reason we like Premier League is just they've got good teams, is that they've got good balance, right? And we feel like the other leagues are a little bit
lopsided.
A little bit lopsided, and maybe that's affecting their TV rights in terms of the kind of massive deals we're getting, they're not getting. Maybe there's more to it than that, but let's just assume that's the case. That money is being followed by TV rights, because let's face it, they're making all the headlines. I think like 40% of the revenue for Premier League is TV rights.
I think 50.
Is it 50?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. It's even more. But yeah, like, I guess the question now is, currently, right, we're seeing China, we're seeing US looking at developing their leagues. Do we think that those leagues, the money is going to make any difference?
Ooh. Okay, so
are they a bit too rubbish anyway?
I'll try and separate them. So I'm going to look at MLS first, just for whatever reason. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I think it's very difficult for them because Americans, they have an interesting way of doing sports, considering they're such a capitalist country.
Yeah.
So business focus, competition, dog eat dog, all that stuff we associate them with.
Yeah.
When it comes to sports, they're randomly quite socialist. So there's no relegation. Teams that finish bottom actually have first pick in the drafts. And this is across all the sports, all the main sports, NFL, NBA, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And with MLS, they're doing the same system.
Right.
And that also includes the salary cap.
Yeah.
So MLS is trying to make it more competitive. I'm not such an expert on NFL and stuff like this, but I know with MLS, they want to do more to attract big players from overseas.
Yeah.
So 3 players per club, they're allowed to be over that salary cap. And is 3 enough? According to Andre Pirlo, probably not. He said quite recently that if America wants to compete with China as the next big league, they have to have more than 3 players that are paid over the X amount of money, over the salary cap. And as long as MLS wants to do football or soccer the American way, I think they can't really compete.
Okay, so obviously, like the point you touched on there about the only certain number of foreign players.
Or players that can be paid over a certain salary.
Yeah. I think that one of the headlines was Kaká getting paid 8 million a year, or washed up Kaká.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
He was a washed up Kaká.
A washed up Kaká getting paid 8 million a year, getting marked out of the game and not scoring a goal against a defender who's getting paid 60,000 USD. And that's a typical example of what happens in the MLS at the moment. You get three international players who ex-brilliant players, and they get paid silly amounts of money. Everyone around them doesn't get paid the amount. But is that not a good thing? Because does that not then raise the standard of their the American players having to play with someone like Kaká? Or do you think no? Do you think that they need to spend more money getting basically South American players or whatever in, and then building their league that way? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think we're touching another question here. So it might improve the United States players, the homegrown talent. They might get a great national team one day. I mean, they've improved a lot, I think, in my own lifetime. I remember '98 they lost to Iran. They will not lose to Iran now. No chance.
Yeah.
So the national team might improve, but I don't think that will necessarily mean their league will improve that much.
Do you not think? So what? So you genuinely believe that? Because let's face it, there's no example of this out of the top 5 leagues. All those top 5 leagues have very, very solid homegrown talent and solid grassroots, right? But you're suggesting that the US, maybe they can focus on grassroots, but their main focus should be importing quality talent through big signings and money.
I think it depends what you're aiming to do. Right now we're talking about the biggest league.
Yeah.
And biggest league, okay, easy example, Premier League.
Yeah.
Biggest players, I think they're foreign pretty much. Kevin De Bruyne, Mo Salah,
Yeah.
David Silva, whoever.
Yeah.
Even look at Spain at the moment. Messi, Cristiano, Luis Suarez, Gareth Bale.
But then if you look at those big teams that you're mentioning, they've built their credibility historically, and I'm not saying this is going to be the case moving forward, but historically the credibility of someone like Arsenal were built on an English spine, Spanish, Barcelona, Spanish spine,
Yeah. I think that can only take you so far. And also, again, another point. In England, Spain, football is our number 1 sport. In the US, they're competing with basketball, American football. In the northern states, ice hockey.
Yeah.
Baseball is still quite big there.
Okay.
I think it's difficult to compete with those sports. I mean,
I've got actually a friend, Noah Keats, his name is.
Shout out.
Yeah, shout out to Noah Keats. He asked I'd do that, so
he loved this.
He's one of our listeners.
He's one of our sponsors.
One of our 10 listeners. He basically he plays now for a team below conference, and he went there. He did a masters in the US, and he was coaching. He was playing one below the MLS. And he made a good point. He said, right, the moment situation in US is it's a massively popular sport, soccer, with females, not so much with males because of, like you said, American football, baseball. But recently there's been studies coming out, about brain damage you can get from wearing the hat in American football, and the
hat, helmet,
whatever you call it, hat, helmet,
cap, baseball cap.
Yeah. And that again is an off-putting factor. The fact that the MLS league is growing, that they're investing more in grassroots. Grassroots before wasn't really there. They're investing more in that, and the coaching standards getting better. All those things he thinks are a reason why the US market has got huge potential and is definitely growing. He said moving forward, and it's, what I want to allude to as well is, you said before about America being a business nation, and most definitely they are. And if you look at, I'll just do a quick comparison here. So, if you compare the top 5 NFL clubs to the top 5 football clubs globally, in terms of like basically value. Yeah. What is this now? This is in terms of.
I guess it's revenue. Usually they measure.
Yeah. It is. Sorry. Right, Man United. So this is 2015. Man United, 765 million. The top, and they're number 1 in the world in terms of richest club.
Wow.
Richest NFL team, Dallas Cowboys, 700 million. Okay, so 65 million less. Second richest is Real Madrid, 688 million. Second richest for NFL is New England Patriots, 523 million. There's quite a big difference.
Big difference,
and the difference it increases. You get lower. Barcelona, third richest club, 688 million. Washington Redskins, 447 million.
Whoa, okay.
Right. So the point I'm making here is that there's clearly a heck of a lot of money in football compared or on the same level as NFL, and we see US as a business nation with a lot of people in their country. Why wouldn't they want to make an opportunity like this? How would they do with it? Because at the same time, you saw recently the whole Wembley thing, right?
NFL clubs want to buy it, right? NFL owners.
Yeah, they want to. They basically the guy owner of Fulham, who also owns
Mr.
NFL. It's clearly not buying it for Fulham, is he? But so he owns Fulham and NFL clubs, and he wants to buy Wembley with the idea of, obviously we've seen NFL being marketed in England recent years before, but he clearly sees that. He wants to pay what 800 million for the stadium in total. That's a heck of a lot of money, and he obviously sees that as a key business opportunity to market NFL, which, let's face it, no one really likes it in our country.
There's a niche hardcore fan group.
Right.
There's a niche hardcore fan
group. Obviously I'm talking in hyperbole there.
Okay.
Most people we know don't like it, don't watch it, right?
True.
It's probably that same flip side, soccer in the US. Why can't that? Why wouldn't that business thinking be bilateral in terms of why wouldn't a UK football audience work in US? You know?
So you mean we would start watching MLS?
I'm basically saying what I'm saying is basically they reckon they can convince UK people to start loving NFL. Why can't the US population be convinced to start loving soccer?
I think they like it when the national team is playing. So I remember in 2014, people were really enjoying it there. It's just not. It's not their culture, and they'll need to. Again, they do need to invest more. Having 3 players above that salary cap isn't enough.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah.
If they want to have a proper, so these players, right? These American players that might grow up in the next 50 years to be great players. This grassroots is doing well. They still want to be paid. I mean, if they're doing well, they still want to get paid a salary they feel they deserve. If a washed-up Kaká is getting paid $8 million, he wants to get paid a few $1 million. But under this current strict regulations, it's not possible.
Okay, so it sounds like for now we're saying US probably not. What about China? Let's bring China into the conversation, because obviously recently China made massive headlines. I guess for me the big headline was, I guess when Oscar went there. A top Brazilian player has won Champions League.
In his prime,
26, 27, he went there for 60 million.
Yeah.
We'd seen before players like Drogba go to China at the end of their career. Which wasn't so much of a surprise, they just might do it for a bit of money, it's a bit of a holiday, it's a new experience. But someone like Oscar to go there, that for me really hit home that this is getting serious now in terms of they're making serious signings.
Yeah, that's same for me as well, because I remember before Oscar, I think Lavezzi went, Pele from Southampton, the Italian striker, went. But these were alright, Lavezzi was quite old, Tevez when he went was quite old.
Yeah.
But Oscar went, I was like, okay, time to pay attention.
Yeah.
And obviously in China, the state plays such a big part in the football. And the Premier, Xi Jinping, has a dream.
Yeah.
He has a dream.
Yeah.
2050, China will win the World Cup.
What's the name of that? It's a plan, isn't it? He calls it.
He's got a proper title for it. But the thing is, we mentioned it already.
Hang on, I got the title.
He's got the title. Okay, let me get the title, then I'll carry talking. Hold tight.
It is called the Football Reform Plan, and it was started in 2015 with the aim basically to get a national team competing for World Cups.
Okay. But have you read the actual plan? Like any sort of detail?
Come on, mate, I know how to do that.
No, but I did read that by 2050, that's what he wants, to win the World Cup. And I guess, is it going to hinder their progress in having a top footballing league? It brings back to that question. Can you build your national team and build your football league at the same time, parallel to each other? Or at some point you have to make a decision which one you want to really invest in?
Okay.
And I think it'll be too difficult, to be honest, to have a World Cup winning team and have a top footballing league, or the top footballing league. Okay,
well let's break it down, because I think that I actually currently disagree. I think China have got the potential to be, to
do both.
And the reason being, the calibre of players that are going over there and the type of attitude towards why they're bringing those players over there, I think is changing. Andres Iniesta has confirmed he's moving to China, right? He hasn't confirmed which team, but he's moving to China, and part of the deal, and this has been reported, is that Barcelona have already set up soccer schools over there recently. He's going to have some sort of involvement in the soccer schools, and also he's going to have the opportunity, or they get the rights to sell his brand of wine in the Chinese market. So you laugh, but there's a commercial aspect to that, and there's also a grassroots aspect to that, right? And again, Adidas have partnered with the Chinese Ministry of Education and China TV to launch an official TV series to teach young people football. So, yeah, we've seen these massive signings, these huge, ridiculous money signings, and as we go, we sort of draw back to what we said at the start of the podcast about Brazilian players, how some will move for money. Once you start to get players who move for money, and you offer them serious money, you might start to get young players moving there. You might start to see in the future a team like Colombia or a team like Argentina or Brazil in a World Cup, and the most exciting players they got are this under 19s player or this 20-year-old guy playing for a Chinese club, playing for Shanghai, and all of a sudden, from a footballing point of view, from a fan's point of view, your eyes turn not just from just to looking at the Premier League, but to looking at the Chinese league. And I think there's obviously going to be barriers. The fact that China is 7 hours behind.
No, ahead.
Ahead. That's obviously, from a viewing perspective, that's really not ideal. But if you look at the way that people view things these days, people watch football, people view videos. It's all online. It's all on Amazon Prime. All these new people are coming to the marketplace. Amazon Prime recently signed a contract with the US Open in tennis, right? So you can only watch the US Open this year through Amazon Prime.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean? So when it becomes online,
new forms of media.
Yeah, I think that these time zones become almost like redundant.
But do you think people will watch that not live? They'll watch it when they wake up, when they can. But then the game is over, and they'll see the score online. It's difficult.
Yeah, but I'm not. But even if you think about it like this, right? If China invests enough in grassroots, and we'll touch on grassroots in a minute, enough in grassroots gets enough exciting players there, and has enough sort of media and marketing impacts in that country alone. The population of China is 1.4 billion. The population of Europe is half of that, 700 million. If they create their own economy of football, right, and it gets to the point where the Western world acknowledges it and they want to see these players, but they're playing in China and they want to see them. There could even be talk in FIFA of a new sort of Champions League that involves teams from China playing in that. The whole world is getting smaller and smaller year by year. I just think that there's, and obviously this is very utopian. This is very a long way off in the future, but I can't see logically why that couldn't happen. Because
I do think that to become a Super League, that's the Chinese Super League, not the Chinese Super League, like a Super League.
Yeah. A top power.
Yeah. You need the influence of foreign players to really make it. So I'm thinking even the Premier League. Cantona came. When Cantona was doing bits at United, that was huge. That was huge.
Yeah.
Whereas China, they got these rules that aren't too different from the States.
Yeah.
So a club can only have 3 foreign players on the pitch at any given time, 4 in their squad, and on top of that, they can't have more foreign players than under 23 Chinese players.
Yeah.
So obviously, Xi Jinping has a focus to improve the grassroots, improve the young talent, and that's fantastic. I actually really applaud that. But I do think that will be the detriment to the league because they can't import the talent that they want to make the league exciting.
Okay, right. So, as I mentioned before, the population of China is twice the size of Europe, right? Football reform, aims, in terms of grassroots, by 2020, aims to have 50 million players, 70,000 pitches, 50,000 coaches, and the idea is to provide a service to an estimated 50 million players, 30 million of which will be in school. And another key part of that is that football is going to be included in the school curriculum, right? Why can't, if they have the resources and they start to import coaches. There's already top coaches there. There's Villas-Boas. There's
Yeah,
Scolari.
highest paid manager in the world. He was the manager that went with Italy in 2006. Lippi.
Lippi, there is he.
18 million.
Cannavaro's managing there.
$18 million a year he's making Lippi. Outrageous salary.
But if they develop those grassroots, it's such a big nation. They have such a pick and choose of talent. And why can't all of a sudden and I think that those caps as well you mentioned, they've been brought in recently to prevent grassroots football suffering. But why can't those players, at the end of the day, we're all human beings. We've all got arms, legs. We're all going to learn a trade, right? If you're from Portugal and there's a lot more, there's your Ronaldo. If you've got the resources and the drive to succeed, and you've got the talent, the physical talent to do it, why couldn't it be a Chinese person who does that? And why couldn't all of a sudden you see absolutely top players come out of China, not in the next 10 years, but in the next 40 years?
No, we can. We can see these Chinese players becoming superstars. We'll enjoy playing with them on FIFA. We'll know about them. But a good example, a good comparison would be, I know Germany had a target to win the 2014 World Cup, which fair play they did. But how much Bundesliga do we really watch, regardless of how much talent they have? So I do think it's very difficult to balance the national team and the league.
Do they need us to watch them? Because it's a big enough market there, retail market alone, they can create their own climate. Referring back to the question, a league that is as big, as powerful as one of the European leagues, can it not be bigger? I'm not saying that it might become something that we watch on a weekly basis, but why can't it become another destination that the top players decide to go to?
For several, well, it can be. To say it can't be, it's been fair.
But then what I'm saying, why won't it definitely be there? Let me rephrase the question.
Definitely because it has its own economy. To be a top league in the world, I think you need to have the international influence. And if they have their own economy, that's great. The Chinese people might love watching it, and fair play, that's great.
That's a market, a retail market, twice the size of Europe, loving to watch it.
But they'll still watch us a lot more.
You reckon?
Yeah, and South Americans will still watch us a lot.
Okay.
Middle East will still watch us. Africa will still watch us.
So it sounds like the point you're touching on is the prestige factor a little bit.
Yeah, and we've already nailed the international market. We've already done that. In Africa, Craig Bellamy has got a foundation in Sierra Leone. He's really famous there. Craig, I read his autobiography. So I was reading about it. He said that when he went there, he was so shocked by the amount of people that knew who he was.
Really?
And he's like, I'm Craig Bellamy. Like, what's going on here? We we know about the Chris Gunter thing, obviously.
Yeah.
Actually, but you can tell the story much better than I can.
Well, it's not much of a story. I mean, it's to do with Chris Gunter, so it can only be so good. But basically, Wales played in a China Cup recently. It was sort of like a team of 4 nations: China, Wales,
Uruguay, and
Czech Republic. And Chris Gunter came off the plane. These 2 girls were screaming his name. They absolutely loved him. They were super fans of Chris Gunter, which I think is the first and the last probably.
Yeah.
They were such big fans of him. They painted a picture of him, and it was a brilliant picture. It was like a painting of him basically.
It's like a portrait, yeah.
And they sort of it was on BBC Sport, this clip. I saw this on BBC Sport. It's a 2-minute clip. You can probably watch it. But they asked them, so girls, why Chris Gunter? And they go, well, he's got the most clap for Wales. We saw him in the Euros, and he was, and I think basically they got a bit confused. They saw the most caps for Wales, and they thought he must be one of their best players. Good player, but I'm not sure quite how it's justified. But the point they made, why do you support Wales? They asked, and the point they made is, well, all of our friends, they watch the Euros and they support France, Germany, Italy, and we saw Wales and we liked Wales, and obviously there's a bit of crossover. Wales are red like China. Wales have dragons like China. So I'm sure they saw some sort of connection in that sense. But it sort of goes to show I think this actually counteracts your point actually because it shows that the Chinese people are mad about football, and if you were to then give them the option to become mad about a team that's in their region of China, I don't see how could that not end up being really big.
It could be big within China. I don't doubt that at all.
Yeah.
But I just don't think without the influence of foreign players, it can be big outside of China.
Okay, so you're saying again, like the US point, the cap is the problem here.
Yes, 100%.
Okay, but what? But what if that cap was to be removed in, let's say, 10 years? So I think that the idea behind the cap is to promote grassroots football and prevent it getting suffocated by these massive purchases. Let's say 10 years time they make the decision, right? Our grassroots is getting good, but we're getting held back by, the caps on these players. We want to see more foreign talent moving in. If they were to make that change, would that change your opinion?
Yes, it would, but not completely, because I still think about the culture, the history of European leagues, European clubs. I think it could happen one day, but we're talking beyond my lifetime, maybe.
Really?
Yeah,
That's a long time.
I think.
That's much longer than the Chinese president wants. He'd be fuming at that.
Well, maybe they can achieve the World Cup within my lifetime.
Okay.
But to have a league that is better or bigger revenue-wise or whatever than any European league, I just don't see it.
Do you think it could be the same as the French league?
I think it could definitely compete with the French league.
Okay.
There's no doubt in my mind, because the French league right now doesn't excite me at all. Doesn't excite anybody outside of France, really. Unless you love Neymar or Cavani, just individual players.
Okay, so the point you're making here is that the sort of what we have as an advantage over the Premier League and the Spanish League have an advantage over the Chinese League, and what you think will all be an advantage for the entirety of your lifetime is the fact that we have history.
We have history, and we're very... Actually, I'll say one thing about England. They have put their...
International history, there's obviously the French League has history, but international
history.
At a club level.
And also, at international level, England has put its national team not as a priority compared to its Premier League.
Yeah.
And even with the Spanish national team, until 2008, they were huge underachievers.
Yeah.
And a big part of it was most of the Spanish players played at Real Madrid and Barcelona.
Right.
Therefore, when they got together for the national team, it was hard for them to really connect and bond.
Same with English, isn't it?
Yes.
Same with, like Rio Ferdinand says the same thing about the English players. The rivalries they go to England camp, and the Man United players will hang around together and.
Exactly, hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah.
So when you have so much emphasis on club football, and that's going to take the priority, and you've already got that international footprint that the Premier League and La Liga has,
right.
I don't see it. You can't really defeat it, especially if you're also focusing so much on your national team.
Okay. So what if the top Brazilian players move there, right, and they stay there? Does that change anything? 19-year-old Brazilian players get paid $4 million a year at 19. This could happen. This could easily happen. 90 million, 5 million a year, 6 million a year, whatever. Enough money for them to want to stay there, and they stay there for their careers. Will that change anything?
So you're talking about now, assuming one day they will remove this restriction on foreign players.
Yeah.
That's the only time they would ever do this sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. You got me there. You got me that question.
Because I feel like that might force the formation of some sort of combined league, not like some sort of combined Champions League that involves maybe Chinese, like these massive Chinese clubs. They got all the best players from a marketing perspective, and let's face it, like a lot of these leagues, one of the biggest sins is TV rights these days. From marketing perspective, that can mean serious money.
Yeah. And
it can also mean missing out on serious money as well if they don't do that.
Yeah.
And from a FIFA point of view, they're supposed to be an institution that bids the game up wherever it is, supports it wherever it is, and if it's growing in China, it gets to the same level as Europe, and as TV rights are pushing this sort of combined league, players are saying, I want to play against this top player in Europe, and.
The thing is, how would they do the distance? Because it's so far away.
To put it in perspective, I don't actually like rugby at all. But I was sitting in the pub yesterday with my dad, and the rugby was on, and there's, I think it's called Super 14, the league, and one of the teams in it are South African.
Really?
Yeah, and they play against Edinburgh and stuff. They're called the Toyota Cheetahs, I think. I doodled it South African, and I was like, wow, they must play in Britain, but I'm pretty sure that their stadium on Wikipedia, the source of most of my information, says they play in South Africa. So I don't know if it ends up.
But that's their main league. So do you think they would scrap the Premier League, and the big clubs would do this international?
I'm not suggesting that it's going to become like a weekly thing. I'm saying that Champions League happens once every 2 weeks for like, let's say, it depends how far it is
Yeah.
really. Why can't that become international in terms of the involvement, or I mean maybe not international because there's not been enough money in places like Brazil to drive that. But if it gets to the point where China, and already as well, if you look at the background to China and how they're getting involved in Europe, like I don't know whether you know this, but China, like the Chinese state invested in the guy who owns Man City.
Okay, I didn't know this now.
There's Chinese money moving into Wolves. I think were another team that have, that the Chinese money is moving. The UK government actually gave, I think, China between £3 to £5 million to try and train 5,000 coaches.
Okay.
That was in 2015. That was Cameron who did that. So there are these like political links as well. I think genuinely one rule in this world is where money goes to, interest goes to.
So do you think in order for China to have the Super League, they will need to also have some sort of competition, football competition against European clubs?
I think that would come as a result of them creating a league that it gets to the point where it's hard to ignore. Obviously, this is really hypothetical.
Yeah.
But I just think that in my head, the reason why I think the Chinese league will continue to grow, undoubtedly, is because clearly it's become the policy of China to do so. China have had so many people, and already you're seeing people like Iniesta, like such a big name, and he's going there, and you're seeing people like Nike signed a 10-year deal to try and sponsor all the teams in the.
All of them.
Yeah, but I think now I think maybe that is already in existence and it's getting phased out. But Adidas are doing these soccer stores. There's loads of these big brands are trying to move into China, and it's because it's such a massive market access.
It's a massive market, but I think we should kind of wrap this up now.
Yeah.
I guess the question is, so we've put the emphasis on China so much. I think we've kind of agreed that China would be the main competition to rival the European leagues.
For me, 100%.
Me too. So will China ever have the top league in terms of football?
I think that's changed the question. So I think the question was can it become one of?
Okay, one of.
One of. I think yes.
But the question is, can the biggest league in football ever be outside of Europe?
Okay. Well, if that's the case, then ever. Infinite amount of time. No. Yeah, I think like the point you made about the prestige that comes with Barcelona, Madrid, the history. I think that would be the hardest factor that prevent them from achieving that in the near future or in our lifetime, like you said. But I think to become one of the biggest leagues, I don't see why not. And the reason, literally the pure reason, is because the amount of people in China, the fact that China is currently the third biggest sport and there's a real push to make it the biggest sport by the president, and the fact that already we've seen players go over there, which doesn't make it like a utopian dream. Players will move there. Top players will move there for money. Not everyone, but some of them will. And I think as well, a lot of brands want to be in China because of the market access. And I think if you combine all those things together and you look at what the points we made at the start about how money has made players move, and money has been the reason why these leagues have progressed, I think money is something China that certainly don't lack.
Yeah.
And I think that the kind of things that make something in this footballing world sort of, what's the word, reputable, quality players, quality brands, big crowd numbers. I think they're gonna not struggle for any of those in a time frame, let's say 2050.
2050. I think I have to slightly disagree. The reason is, as I said already, you do need to have some sort of international influence if you want to become such the top league. And if China keep this regulation, this rule, whatever you want to call it, of 3 foreign players only, it's just not, I just don't see it being possible that enough people from outside of China will want to watch it. So you're right, it's a massive country, huge market, so much money. And they might be big within China, such as ping pong is huge within China. Obviously they have a lot of money there to spend. But are we going to really stop investing money in the Premier League and use that money for China? Will China be able to have 50% of its revenue from media because they're going to sell the media rights to us and we're going to spend so much money like they spend on us. I don't see it. Yeah, it's nice to disagree sometimes. Agree to disagree.
I guess that concludes our podcast.
Yeah.
We disagree. Thanks for listening. Anything else to say, Pam?
No, thank you for listening and speak to you all next time.
Yeah, bye.